Tech Talk Tuesday, you guys. It is now time. Yes, it is Tuesday. Hey, Donald. Yeah, we got interesting to tell you today now. I'm going to tell you. Tech Talk Tuesday. Hey, Alan. Donald. I just wanted to tell you guys that this is Tech Talk number 153. 153. Jackie has 140 of these episodes, maybe 141 or 2 on Star Race GA on YouTube. Star Racing GA, I believe it is. Hey, Ricky. Hey, Roger. I just wanted you guys to know that I'm thankful for all of that, and I got some interesting stuff to share with you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about valve springs installed height. Hey, Chris. Hey, Edward. We're going to talk about lift. We're going to talk about coil bind and bind height. And I want to tell you, I want to go ahead and share with you guys right away. Thank you, Edward. I love seeing you guys on here. Hey, Charles. You straighten that boy out over there, I hope. Sent me some interesting stuff about some lifters being broken. Hey, Cash. Yeah, I know. We're trying to put 5 pounds in a 1 pound bag, and a lot of times it won't fit. Hey, Steve. Thank you guys for checking in. I wanted to tell you that this is going to be an episode in me talking out of turn a little bit. These are things that I think I know based on the things I think I learned. Could be things I made a mistake on and didn't learn, but I'm going to share with you what I think. And there are so many people on here, up here and down on here, and they're going to be on here on YouTube, that are going to look and they're going to read and they're going to see this stuff that I'm doing, and they're going to say, oh no, I don't think that's right, George. I think you made a mistake on that. Hey, Brian. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm excited about just sharing the things that I've learned. And I have some cool ideas that it just breaks this stuff down. It's very complicated because in our history in racing, there have been some scientists or some mad scientists that have hocus pocused a lot of this stuff because nobody knew what they were talking about. And I'm going to try my best to break it down and make it be a little bit less trouble to understand, because I see every day valve springs for sale that people have for Chevrolets and Fords and Chryslers and Milwaukee 8s and twin cams, and there's all different kinds. I mean, this is a pro stock valve spring for a V8. It'll handle 1-inch 200 lift with room to coil bind. Ooh, it goes in 450, 500 on the seat. Has about 1,300 pounds open. I can't even squeeze it 1 pound. I put it in my spring tester and I can't even pull the handle. I know that I have some this cool stuff. Here's like a stock Screaming Eagle Milwaukee 8 spring compared to this Pro Stock spring. And of course, this is good for 5,700 RPM, and this one's good for 11,000 RPM, depending on how heavy the valve is. And I also wanted to tell you guys that over the years, we have seen these valves get longer and longer and longer, and the springs get taller and taller and taller. And the reason they are is because we are learning how to get more air in the engine. So we take the valves in the engine, and they were in here to 23 degree, 24 degree. Then they put them in at a 20. Then they got SR rollover 20s, and then they got the old GSs were in here about 26. Then and the Z1s, and then we stood them up, got the GSs in there about 18, and then they came out with a really cool 18, and now you've got LS stuff that's even more straight up. And our Pro Stocker's in at 5 degrees. The S&S Pro Stocker's in at 5 degrees, whereas back in the day, the Hemi is pretty far back over here. And the more you stand these valves up, the smaller the chamber gets. And the only way you can put lift in them, open them and close them, is to get a really long valve. Because when you lay this down, you can get a lot of lift in there because the valve goes back and forth across the center of the bore. But when you put this long valve in there, you can stand it up a little bit straighter, get a smaller chamber, and you can put a lot of lift in it. This valve right here handles 1.25 inch lift perfectly. You heard what I said, 1.25 inch. This valve goes in on the seat, opens up 1.25 inch, goes back on the seat, opens up 1.25 inch, and it has to have a really long spring to make it work. So I just want to share some ideas with you. I'm going to talk about these three springs right here for the Milwaukee 8. I use the Milwaukee 8 a lot, you guys, because it is an engine that I work in daily as my hobby now, because I am retired. I don't build engines anymore, but this gives me a great example of how you can make this work on your LS1, your LS3, your Hemi, Chrysler, Ford. All this stuff works because these parts, these springs, these valves, these keepers and retainers, these guys right here, these guys don't have any clue what they're installed in. They do not know. They don't know, nor do they care. A lot of folks, even in the Harley industry, do not realize, but this is a Screaming Eagle spring. It comes in the 131 kits, and they sell it for stage 3s and all kind of stuff for the Milwaukee 8s. And this is an ovate wire. And I'm going to tell you, this is a round wire right here, this green one, and this brown one over here is an ovate wire. You don't really know it by looking at it, but this wire is really thin this way. It's only, what's that say? 1.140, 145. But if you look at it on the end of the spring, you can see it's a giant wire. And it's about 40 thou, 50 thou out around. So it will stack up really tight. This is a Screaming Eagle spring. It's made out of ovate wire. That is a complicated piece, but I have not seen any really nice ovate springs that or use really good wire, because a valve spring, the way I make it right in my mind is like you get an old wire coat hanger. I know a lot of coat hangers these days are made out of plastic, but if you take a wire coat hanger and you just bend it and bend it and bend it and bend it, and you touch it where you've been bending, it changes colors, it gets real hot, it will burn your hand. A cold coat hanger, if you bend it, bend it, bend it, bend it, it will burn your fingers if you touch where you're bending it. And these springs right here are steady going up and down, going up and down, going up and down, and this wire gets really hot. And you want some real high quality wire here. Here's a couple of different PSI springs for the Milwaukee 8. We have the old kind that we've been selling for 4 or 5 years, and then we have the newest, latest, greatest. They're both really nice round wire made out of good pieces, but you can see they're not fat on the bottom or fat on the top. But this one spring is lighter and smaller, and it can handle the same stress. And also, since it's missing 1/8 of a coil, we will be able to stack it up tighter, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. Couple things I know that make valve springs kind of like black magic. But everybody has a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you ought to buy a machinist ruler. So like a little 6-inch machinist ruler. You ought to order you one of these guys. And you ought to get you a caliper. If you're going to put these together and work on cylinder heads, you need to have a couple of these items. And another thing that if you don't have a spring tester, we have a vise. This is the cheapest, creepiest, most junkiest vise I could find in my shop, because I came in my house to do this video, and my vices are either bolted to benches or they're mounted in an engine stand, and I didn't want to bring a giant engine stand in the house. But I want to show you one thing that we have learned about people say on the internet, and everybody will tell you, when we sell our 3/4 cam, which is a 585 lift cam for the Milwaukee 8s, they say that the stock Screaming Eagle spring, not stock springs, the Screaming Eagle kit springs will not handle that much lift, because Harley said somewhere that they'll handle 540, 550. But I'm telling you, those are the marketing predators telling you that. This spring right here will go over 600 lift, easy. And I'm going to show you how you can check it. You put it in install height, which I'm going to move this camera a little bit so I can get in here and work on this. Please don't get excited about the noise, but can you see my vise okay? I'm going to put this spring in this vise. And I'm not telling you everybody needs to do this, but this is how you can find out for sure what you got. And you can also say, the factory says, or you can measure your own. Measure how tall the spring is in the head from the seat where the seal holder goes, all the way to the retainer. You can measure it. And if it says that it needs to be in at, let's say it needs to be in at 1 inch 550. There's 1 inch 550 right here. Let's lock this down at 1 inch 550. And let's set this spring. You can see how much further I need to go, right? I want you to see what the spring looks like installed in the engine. That's about it. That's what the spring looks like with the valve on the seat. This is called install height, and it would be seat pressure on this would be around 80 or 90 pounds on the seat. 4-valve Harley. All right, so now let's go and watch let's see what lift we can go to. This is a little bit of a pain because it's got a small handle, and I'm gonna tell you something. I lubricated this vise here and here, and it is still hard to turn because these springs are a booger bear. They get up there 300 pounds when you get close to coil bind. But we did see the spring installed at 1,550. All right, here's what one looks like when you got it at max or coil bind or bind height. You can't squeeze this. This is a piece of steel stacked solid. There's nothing there left, okay? What does this measure? Well, it measures, look how little this is now, y'all. I wish you could see this. I hope you can, because I'm going to do the best I can fumbling here live. This is not a professional production. All right, now we're in at 840. 840. So we took this Screaming Eagle spring that they sell with their stage 3, stage 4, and the 131 kits. We put it in at 1 inch 550 lift. 1 inch 550. You see that? Yep, you can see it. Minus 0.840 equals. That's a 710 lift. That's 710 lift right here. Wow. Okay, George, maybe you can't put it in at 1,550. I know, right? But look, the reason they tell you they won't work with a 600 lift or 700 lift cam is because they pray to the good Lord that you don't try it, because this is just like that coat hanger hanging up in your closet. If you bend it this much and stack it up this tight, you're going to absolutely blow up some parts. So I'm gonna back it out of here. And now we're gonna put it in the spring tester and verify some of our numbers. I know this is a little bit boring to watch, but let's try and make it work. All right, we dropped a valve spring. I hope I didn't lose you. All right, y'all still there? Thank goodness. All right, I'm gonna turn this light on. I'm gonna put this spring in the spring tester, and I'm gonna pull it to 1 inch 550. All right, right there it says it has 70 pounds on the seat at 1,550. So I'm gonna zero the dial indicator over here. Everybody see that? Spring tester's on 0. I'm gonna pull it to 70 pounds. That sets the install height at 1,550. Maybe it needs to go a little further than 1,550. There it is. That's more like it right there. I couldn't see up under the arrow good. All right. Everybody looking? Okay, let's go add some lift to it now. Let's go. Watch my dial. This is 100 lift from install height, 200 lift, 300, 400. I'm at going 500 lift now. And my lights can't see. Sorry. And now here comes 600 lift. And look at my spring. This is a Screaming Eagle spring. It's not coil bound yet. Matter of fact, it can go 700 lift. And then it coil binds right shortly thereafter. Just because, this is a great example of just because you can, you should never. This spring is made out of cheap wire. I don't even know if it's made anywhere we know of. And it is an ovate design, which will fail eventually. Now listen, when they use it for like a 3/4 cam, the 585 and their 515 and some of their other cams, this spring is fine because we're not asking more than it can handle. This is fine, okay? Now, we go to our new spring. It's a smaller, that's a tiny spring compared to this. I hope you can see that. Can you see that this spring is tiny compared to this one? This spring right here is so stout. It has like a half a coil less. So there's several ways to get full lift. Get more lift is you make a thinner wire, which they did. They made the thinnest wire ever. They made this out of some really thin wire this way. But this way, they made it out of some fat wire. I showed you that earlier. But I'm not a fan of ovate. Also, you can notice that this spring is pretty short. And the retainer is steel, and it is heavy. And the retainer we're using now, look how little it would be on that spring. And we got tons of weight out of here. And also, we use lightweight valves. So with a lightweight spring, a lightweight retainer, and a lightweight valve, we can control at high RPM. Now this spring, let's go back over here to the vise, and I want you to see, this is a spring that will hold up. And I'm telling you, this same wire is what we use, this same material. These are good for 11,000 RPM and 1 inch 200 lift. We're only asking this wire to go even half of that. We're asking it to go 600 or a little over 600. But while I'm winding this up, I want you guys to understand that the thing I'm telling you about is all at the same time. While these 3 years of Tech Talk have been going on, there have been newer and new products coming out for the Milwaukee 8. One is roller rocker arms that add to the rocker ratio. Another one is even Star Racing has a 615 lift cam, and I hear rumors of there's more lift cams coming out than that. Well, if you put a 615 Star full race cam in with a S&S roller rock arm, you got 630. All right, this is coil bound. This is stacked. This is solid height. All right, I'm gonna measure solid height on it. Remember the other one was 840 solid height, but it had real small diameter wire. Actually. Easy word for you to say. All right, this one is 945. So this spring is 100 thousandths. It stacks up 100 thousandths sooner because it has big fat wire. So this one won't go to 710. This one will go in about, we might get it to go in a little over 600. But I just wanted you to see this. Oh, listen to me. If you buy S&S roller rock arm and a 615 or a 600 or something cam and that nature, this is what happens every time your engine turns over. Your spring goes to full lift, even at idle. So I know that sounds ridiculous, but listen, when you're just sitting there letting your bike run, listen to it run at 1,000, 1,100 RPMs, it's going right here at full lift, full lift, full lift. And if you've got too much cam and too much rock arm in it, you're just beating the tar out of those parts. And when this spring stacks up solid with a 1/6/4 rocker ratio S&S roller rocker with a 615 cam, you are bending push rods. You are shoving the camshaft out the bottom of the cases. You are shoving the wheel out of the lifters. And you also are breaking studs off the whole rocker arms in. And then you want to get mad at whoever made those parts. And it was actually the guy that added all those parts together that didn't know what happens when you put them all together. What happens when you put all those parts together. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Going back to the spring tester. I hope this makes sense to you. Okay. I'm going to go back to the same install height, which was 1,550. Now we're at about 90 pounds. Yep, about 90 pounds. This spring will live and last, okay? Just remember that. We're going 100 lift, 200 lift, 300 lift, 400 lift, 500 lift, 600 lift, and a nice 655. She's stacked up solid at 655. So now, think about what I said about when you go to a 615 lift, okay, let's go to 615 lift. Here is 615 lift. Look at the coils. When you have a 615 full race cam in your Milwaukee 8, this is what the spring looks like every time the valve opens. And at 6,000 RPM, that intake valve is opening up 58 times a second. 58 times a second. Now, throw a S&S roller rocker in there, and now you got this much. And it's going to wear out soon. People say, well, can you run the 615 on the street? Sure you can. Do I want to? No. I like to back off 600 lift, 500 lift, 485. This is how I like my springs to look, and that's why our 30-30 cam sells so good. Let's go back to this spring, put in at 90 pounds. That's 90 pounds. That's what the install height looks like with 90 pounds of seat pressure. And let's go to the 30-30 cam. Let's go 100 lift, 200 lift, 300 lift, 400 lift. Now let's go to a 485. There it is. That's what a 30-30 cam has. The 3/4 cam now is a 585. Let's add another 100 to that. There we go. That's what our spring looks like with a 585 cam. And now let's go take it to the 615. Here's 600, 615, and then let's put the S&S roller rocker in it to get it up to 631. And we only have 10, 20, 30 thousandths to coil bind. So in order to run a cam that big and run a spring this good, you're going to have to put it in less than 90. You're going to have to put this cam in. You're going to have to put the spring in to run those cams and those rock arms. You got to put this spring in at 80. Now, if that install height is 1/600, that's what it is. But if you back it off to installing it at 80, and that's why you read on the internet and look at all the competitor springs, they tell you the install height number you got to have. That's great, but you really need to know what your spring looks like when it goes to full lift. And then back off from there. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to go to 615. I'm going to run a 615 cam. I'm going to put it at 615. And I want to be far away from coil bind, 615. So where do I need to install that so I'm far away from coil bind? I want to be 40 or 50 away from coil bind. So I'm going to have to go 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and 615. Might have to back off on your install height to get the spring pressure. You might need 80 on the seat. And I'm going to tell you too, learn while we're talking about seat pressure, is the seat is when nothing's happening. That's when the valve's sitting on the seat. There's no cam hitting no rock arm. There's no rock arm. There's no push rod pushing on a lifter. There's no lifter pushing on a push rod or push rod pushing on a rock arm. And the rock arm's not pushing on the valve because it's on the seat. So people worry about seat pressure. Does it matter? Yeah, it's a benchmark, but it's not the holy grail of what you need to have. This right here. You need to know what your stack height is. I don't care who did your heads. Bob, Tom, Bob, Real, Ron, Rick. I don't care. All those guys are awesome. If they did your head, you need to measure how much room you have from the spring seat. That's where this little baby goes. From the spring seat to right under here. Whatever that distance is between here. When the guy sends you your head, and you put this on the head, and then you slide the valve up in there, and then you put this on with no spring, you measure between this flange, and whatever that number is, put it in a spring tester and see what it is. Or let's say it's 1 inch 500 or 1 inch 600. You can also put it in this vise at 1/600 and then wind in your camshaft. You can put it in at 1/600 or 1/500, wherever the guy tells you, 1/550, 1/575, wherever he sets your head up at. Okay? Wherever he sets it, you can put it in here and you can wind your cam in. 100 lift, 200 lift, 300 lift. And you can measure it with the caliper. You can measure it with the machinist ruler and get those numbers and see how much lift you can get away with. And if it stacks up with 600 lift, remember to back it off 50 or 100. Back it off 50 or 100 so you're not near coil bind. So if you want a 600 lift cam, that means you need to have a spring that'll go 650 or 700, somewhere in that range, so you're not stacking that for all it's worth and becoming a solid bind height every single revolution that the intake goes. Okay. Oh, please let me apologize. I have 3 of these. They're digital. They're high-end billet aluminum. I got a silver one and a red one, but this is the oldest valve spring tester I could find. I think this thing was built in the 50s. It is a really, really old spring tester, and it has been so good to me. My entire career came here, and then along the line, those companies came out with some really cool ones, and this is just a relic. Very adjustable. You can set this to be wherever you want it, as long as you are doing it the same every time. You got to be able to set this on 0. And when you get to your install height, I like to put a dial indicator on here and set it to install height, and then I can count my lift. A lot of people can't read this scale good, but that's how we were born and raised, reading this scale. And it's just a lot easier to do now. But I wanted to share that info with you guys. And I also wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching Tech Talk Tuesday. And I want to also say, guys sent me these socks, man. Check this out. I'll see you next Tuesday. And before I go, I wanted to share with you guys that some folks sent me some great questions. We have that jot form deal on my Facebook page where you can go in and click on the form and you can write down what you would like to talk about or questions. And I am saving those up. I'm going to hit them all up one time, maybe 2 times, but I've got them and I want to share that with you. But thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Tech Talk 153 is in the books. Please remember, we're 3 Tech Talks away from a 3-year birthday. Happy birthday, America. We are looking forward to doing 154 with y'all next week. And thank y'all so much for watching. May God bless, and God bless the USA.